Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of Intuitive Angling, and man, I really appreciate you guys checking out today's video. And I just want you all to know that, man, I really appreciate it and never take it for granted that you guys take some time to watch these videos, because I know that there's a ton of YouTube channels out there. So I just want you guys to know that thank you very much for making some time for it. Guys, today we're going to be talking a little bit about what happens in the fall time of the year when the leaves start falling. Now, every fall, usually depending upon what part of the country that you're in, the leaves start falling anywhere between first part of October to first part of November, you know, where you are geographically. Like here in Missouri, it's right now it's getting into the second week October, and we're just starting to notice the leaves starting to fall. We haven't had any cold weathers like frost or anything like that to get a big number of leaves coming down, but the leaves are starting to come down on the windy days. Now, one of the things that I have found out about that, guys, there's something that happens every October in bass fishing, or like I said, in the time when, when the leaves start falling down. When you start noticing some coloration, different colorations in the leaves, and they start falling, something happens. I'm not really sure exactly what causes this happens, but there's one thing that happens every fall, mid to late fall, or mid to late October, early November, is the bass start biting the jig good. Now, jig fishing, you know, you can catch them all year long, but there's windows during the year that they really excel. Now, for example, in my opinion, you know, those windows are like the late pre-spawn is really good for a jig. And then also, you know, you're talking about some post-spawn stuff can be decent with a jig, especially if the water is high, like flooded in bushes and that. But the time that I really start fishing a jig is when those leaves right now start falling. And this will last into like December when they get onto this. Now, a lot of this has to do with a combination of things. It has to do with the dropping water temperatures, has to do with the different angle that the sun is in the sky, the shorter daylight hours, you know, just the seasonal progression of the fish. A lot of it is a mystery we don't understand. But when you're talking about a mood and a personality of a bass that goes back and forth from a chasing mode to a non-chasing mode, that is what happens when the leaves start falling down. It's like when that happens, that's when I pick up my jig. And there's a couple different jig setups that I use. There's basically two different jigs that I will use this time of year as far as when those leaves start falling. And a lot of it is based upon water clarity. If that water clarity is like under 2.5 foot in visibility, I'm going with a bigger full-size jig, like, you know, like my Blockhead Old School jig. I prefer a 3/8 ounce. Another thing about it, guys, is there's two colors that work really good in not only the full-size jig, but the finesse jig I'll talk about here in a second. And that is a brown, and the other one is a black with chartreuse in it. Now, a lot of it depends on the water clarity. When that water clarity is like, say, 1 to 2 foot, guys, it's hard to beat a black and chartreuse jig in the fall time of the year. That's probably my favorite time of year to fish it. I catch them on it, you know, different times of the year, but man, it's hard to beat a black and chartreuse jig when you have that water visibility in the fall. And I'll use a variety of different color of trailers on it. If the water is really dirty, I'll use like a black neon trailer, a Zoom Super Chunk. If the water is a little bit cleaner, I might go to a blue or maybe even a green pumpkin, something like that. But works really good for me in that little bit more off-colored water. But if that water visibility is over 2.5 or 3 feet, really about over 3 feet, I like a straight brown jig, just a straight brown jig with a green pumpkin trailer. Again, the chunk type trailer. I don't like the curly type trailers in the fall. Either a big salty chunk or a super chunk, something like that. Frog type trailer. Now, that is really good under those scenarios there, and especially when the fish are around some type of wood cover, you know, laydowns or stumps or boat docks, that type of thing. Now, the other one that works just as good in the fall time of the year when the leaves start falling is more of a finesse type jig, just more of a compact jig. And again, this is all about brown, straight brown, no brown and orange, no brown and different type of colors, straight brown, green pumpkin trailer on it. Most of the time I'm using some type of 5/16 to 7/16 ball head finesse jig with a little, like a Zoom critter crawl, just a small little trailer on it. And this is when I'm targeting rock. one of my favorite things to do, and this has been so predictable every October, is when those leaves start falling and they start getting orange and yellow in color on them. I'll pick up that little brown jig and I'll run up in like the upper 2/3 of some major creeks or some of the main river, the major river arms in the lake, and I'll get on those channel banks, those rocky channel banks, and I'll just cast and pitch that jig down the rocky banks, a little finesse jig. When you're, say for example, if you guys are up on a steep bank and you know there's a bunch of trees on a steep bank or a bluff bank, and you hear the wind rustling and the leaves are falling down that bluff and they're falling into the water, guys, that is the best time to fish a finesse jig on rock. I've caught so many bass doing that out there, and they'll bite it better than a spinnerbait, a crankbait, topwater, anything like that. And another advantage about fishing a jig when the leaves are falling is you can fish it, because a lot of times in October and November, when the leaves are falling hard, if you got a lot of trees on the bank, there's so many leaves floating, you can't fish a crankbait or a moving bait. You'll get hung up on leaves all the time. So it's another good reason to fish it. But main thing about it, guys, is, you know, once you start noticing those leaves start changing, turning color, you know, make that transition into your jig fishing. I know a lot of people are a little bit intimidated by jig fishing, but guys, it's no different than fishing a worm. If you can catch bass on a Texas rig worm or a shaky head or a creature bait, you can catch fish on a jig. You basically work it the same way. You just hop it a little bit higher. Bite feels the same. You know, everything's very similar with it. So anyway, guys, hope it helps out, and we'll talk to you guys later. See you.